You finally have a completely free Saturday. No alarms, no meetings, no obligations. You sit down on the couch and turn on a movie. You are supposed to be relaxing, but about 15 minutes in, it happens. Your chest starts to tighten. Your foot starts tapping. Suddenly you're thinking about the laundry, the emails you didn't reply to on Friday, the fact that you haven't worked out, and then the big one, that creeping feeling that you were falling behind in life just because you were sitting here doing nothing. If you physically cannot relax without feeling a crushing wave of guilt, you are not broken. You are not just a workaholic. Your brain is simply interpreting stillness as a literal threat to your survival. And there's a fascinating neurological reason why. To understand why this happens, we have to look at the specific kind of agony that is your version of relaxing. For you, downtime doesn't feel like a relief. It feels like you are actively committing a crime. You see other people go on vacation, lie on a beach for 6 hours staring at the clouds, and you think, how are they just doing nothing? How are they brain allowing that? Because if you try to do that, your internal monologue turns into a drill sergeant. The moment you sit still, a checklist materializes in your head. I should be organizing that drawer. I should be getting ahead on next week's project. I should be reading a book that improves my skills, not just staring at a wall. You feel this constant heavy pressure to justify your existence through productivity. If you are not producing, building, or fixing something, you feel entirely useless. So what do? You end up doing what I call fake rest. You sit on the couch, but you are aggressively scrolling through your phone, or you are watching a show while simultaneously answering emails and planning tomorrow's dinner. You are physically stationary, but mentally you are running a marathon. And the worst part is the shame. You feel exhausted, you desperately want a break, but when you finally get the chance to take one, you spend the entire time feeling guilty for not being productive. You look at a friend or a partner who can just take a peaceful nap on a Sunday afternoon, and you genuinely feel like you are fundamentally broken. Like your brain is missing its off switch. But I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are not broken. Your brain is actually doing exactly what you trained it to do. But here's the most fascinating part. This guilt you are feeling isn't a personality flaw or a sign of weakness. It is a deeply ingrained biological response. To understand why your body violently rebels against a comfortable couch, we have to look at what is actually happening inside your nervous system right at this very moment. Normally, your autonomic nervous system operates on a beautiful, balanced pendulum. It swings into the sympathetic state, the fight or flight mode when you need energy to tackle a tight deadline, navigate traffic, or solve a problem. And then, once the task is done, it is supposed to swing gracefully back into the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode. This is how human beings are biologically designed to function. But for you, the overthinker, that pendulum broke a very long time ago. You have been running at 100 miles an hour for so long, constantly putting out fires and meeting endless expectations, that your nervous system got stuck in the on position. In neuroscience, this is known as a state of chronic hyperarousal. Your brain's alarm system, specifically a structure called the amygdala, has essentially forgotten how to turn itself off. It has completely recalibrated your biological baseline. Your brain now looks at a state of high stress, elevated cortisol, and constant forward momentum. And it tells your body, yes, this is our normal operating level. This is safe. Because you have spent years relying on productivity to secure your job, your status, and your fundamental sense of safety, your brain has forged a powerful neural pathway. It has merged the modern concept of doing things with the ancient biological imperative of surviving. In the primitive layers of your brain, crossing things off a to-do list isn't just about being a responsible adult. It is literally how you stay alive. Think of your brain like a hypervigilant security guard. For years, you have told this guard that as long as you are working and producing, the perimeter is secure. So, what happens when you suddenly sit down on a quiet Saturday and try to do absolutely nothing? You are essentially forcing that security guard to abandon their post and take a nap in the open. The guard panics. It slams the emergency button and floods your bloodstream with adrenaline. That tightness in your chest is your body physically bracing for an invisible impact, and that physiological agitation is translated by your conscious mind as a profound sense of guilt. But if you think this is just a biological glitch, we need to talk about the psychological armor you have been wearing your entire adult life. And this is where we enter the realm of what psychologists call internalized productivity. You did not become like this in a vacuum. You grew up in a culture that essentially glorifies exhaustion. We live in a world that treats the hustle as the highest form of virtue and sleep deprivation as a badge of honor. From a very young age, your brain absorbed a profoundly dangerous equation. Your inherent worth as a human being is directly calculated by your daily output. If you are busy, you are important. If you are drained, you are valuable. If your calendar is full, you matter. Because of this conditioning, you unconsciously adopted busyness as your primary coping mechanism. It became a psychological shield against a much deeper, more complex anxiety. Think about it. When you are rushing from one task to the next, frantically answering emails and trying to optimize every single minute of your day, your brain simply does not have the processing power or the bandwidth to feel anxious about the bigger, scarier things in life. We do not have the time to sit down and worry about whether you're actually happy with your career, or if your relationships are truly fulfilling, or if you are carrying around unresolved emotional weight from your past. In this way, busyness is an incredibly effective anesthetic. Your brain uses the constant grinding friction of doing things to drown out the quiet, uncomfortable noise of your own inner thoughts. It is exactly like running a very loud vacuum cleaner all day long, just so you do not have to hear the floorboards creaking underneath you. And here is the trap. Because society actively applauds you when you overwork, your brain interprets this exhausting self-destructive loop as a massive success. You receive constant external validation and dopamine hits for abandoning your own biological need for rest. So when you finally sit down on that couch and try to rest, you are not just pausing a task. You are actively stripping away your psychological armor. You are suddenly taking away the very thing that proves your value to the world, and more importantly, to yourself. Every time you choose to rest, a cognitive dissonance occurs. Your logical mind knows you need a break, but your conditioned subconscious screams that you are becoming irrelevant. This creates a vicious psychological tug of war. The guilt you feel is not just about the unwashed laundry. It is the panic of a lost identity. You have tied your self-esteem so tightly to your to-do list that an empty schedule feels like a direct threat to your ego. This is why doing nothing feels so incredibly dangerous. You have somehow convinced your own nervous system that your utility is the only rent you pay to exist on this planet. But here's the piece of the puzzle that finally explains the intense physical symptoms you experience. If you think this guilt is purely a psychological mindset issue, wait until you see what the actual chemistry in your bloodstream is doing. The moment you stop moving, because this is where the biological and the psychological violently collide. Think of your body like a car that has been driving down the highway at 100 miles an hour for years. You have the gas pedal pressed all the way to the floor. Your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, which are the hormones required to maintain that intense speed. Now, imagine you suddenly slam on the brakes and park the car on the couch. The car stops, but all of that kinetic energy, all of that biochemical momentum has to go somewhere. When you drop the shield of busyness, your baseline cortisol levels do not magically reset to zero just because you turned on a movie. You still have gallons of stress hormones rushing through your veins, but suddenly there is no outlet. There is no email to answer, no crisis to manage, no physical task to burn it off. So what happens? Your brain gets incredibly confused. It looks at the massive amount of cortisol in your system, and then it scans your quiet living room, and it encounters a massive contradiction. The primitive part of your brain says, wait a minute, we have all this survival juice pumping through our system, but there is no visible threat. We are just sitting here. Therefore, the fact that we are sitting here must be the danger. We must have let our guard down, and there is a predator lurking right outside. Because the cortisol has nowhere to go, your nervous system interprets the stillness itself as a life-threatening emergency. Your brain cannot comprehend that you are safe because your internal chemistry is screaming that you are in the middle of war zone. And this leads to the ultimate biological misinterpretation. Your brain needs to find the logical reason for why you feel so physically agitated. It needs a target, so it manufactures one. It starts bringing up everything you have not done yet. The laundry, the life goals, the text messages you ignored. It uses guilt as a tool to force you back into motion. The guilt is not a moral failing or a sign that you are lazy. It is just your brain's extremely clumsy way of getting you back to work. Why? Because working is the only environment where your chronically elevated stress levels actually make logical sense to your nervous system. You are literally feeling guilty because your body is going through a chemical withdrawal from stress. But what if I told you that this agonizing guilt is not actually a sign that you are a broken workaholic? If you think this is just a tragic flaw in your personality, you are fundamentally misunderstanding your own brilliant mind. Let's completely flip the script on what is actually happening when you try to rest. You look at your inability to sit still and you label it as a weakness. You think, I'm just obsessed with work. I am a slave to hustle culture. But that is just a surface layer. The profound hidden truth is that your brain is not terrified of the couch. It is terrified of the quiet. is the quiet is the exact place where the noise of the outside world finally stops, and you are forced, often for the very first time all week, to actually meet yourself. Think about the sheer amount of psychological data your brain processes every day. When you are rushing, producing, and putting out fires, you are successfully outrunning your own shadow. You do not have to listen to the whisper of your own unmet emotional needs. You do not have to confront your unresolved grief, your relationship doubts, or that terrifying tiny voice asking if you are actually living the life you want. The silence is a mirror, and looking into it can be incredibly daunting. So, what does your highly sensitive, beautifully complex brain do? It protects you. This guilt you feel is not a work ethic. It is an advanced high-level alarm system. It is a survival mechanism. Your brain calculates that facing your raw, unfiltered emotions in the stillness might be too overwhelming, too destabilizing. So it creates a magnificent distraction. It points aggressively at the unwashed laundry. It highlights the unread emails. It screams, "Look over there. Look at this urgent, tangible problem we can solve right now." Your brain is essentially throwing busy work at you to save you from existential dread. It is not punishing you. It is shielding you. Your inability to rest is not a lack of discipline or a failure to chill out. It is a profound testament to how deeply and fiercely your mind is working to keep you safe from emotional discomfort. You are not a malfunctioning machine. You are simply operating an incredibly advanced piece of neurological hardware that prioritizes your immediate psychological safety over your physical relaxation. I need you to hear this, truly hear it. Resting is not a reward you unlock only after you have finished everything on your to-do list. Because here is the brutal, liberating truth. The list is never finished. Life is not designed to be completed. The laundry will always pile up again, the inbox will always refill, and the goals will constantly shift. If you wait for the mythical moment of done to finally exhale, you will be holding your breath for the rest of your life. You have to stop viewing rest as an indulgence, a luxury, or a sign of laziness. Rest is a non-negotiable biological requirement. It is the vital maintenance your highly tuned nervous system desperately needs to repair itself. So, how do we actually fix this? You have to gently, patiently retrain your brain. You have to teach that hyper-vigilant security guard that it is actually safe to stand down. When you sit on a couch and the wave of panic hits, do not fight it and do not immediately jump up to do a chore. Just sit there. Notice the tightness in your chest. Acknowledge the frantic thoughts and gently remind yourself, I am safe. Doing nothing right now is not a threat to my survival. I am simply existing, and that is enough. It will feel deeply uncomfortable at first. It will feel like you are breaking a fundamental rule of your existence. But every single time you choose to stay on that couch, you are rewiring those ancient neural pathways. You are proving to your nervous system that your worth is not tied to your output. You are a human being, not a human doing. Your value was inherent the moment you were born, long before you ever had a to-do list. You do not have to earn the right to occupy space, to breathe, or to simply be still. The most profound, productive thing you can do for your brilliant, exhausted mind right now is to give it the grace of absolute stillness. So, tell me the truth. Does sitting entirely still on a weekend make you secretly panic? Do you feel that familiar guilt creeping in the moment you try to just exist? Let me know down in the comments, because I promise you, you are not the only one feeling this way. If this video finally gave a name to a part of yourself that you've been struggling to understand, consider subscribing. This is a safe space for us to decode our minds and understand ourselves a little bit better. Together,